So I wanted to continue to talk about how to work with negative states of mind, which was a question that was asked recently, and last time I talked very broadly, which I think is important because I think it's important to have the Buddhist worldview, if you're a Buddhist anyway, or to incorporate the parts of that that work for you if you're not. And the reason I say that is because the Buddha basically was all about getting rid of suffering, and he figured that out, and so that can help anyone. But that's kind of the big picture. Then there's your own practice and what you're doing. And so for myself, that's the only way I can talk about this, and then I think if it's helpful to someone, they can take from that and use the tools. We're encouraged, and if you become a Buddhist, you take refuge. And so that's a process that happens over a long period of time in terms of what that really means. And for me, the clearest thing is that it means using the Dharma tools. And so when a suffering comes, I want to use a own example. I had something come up some weeks ago that was quite difficult, kind of in line with what the person was asking, these kind of events that are big, like death, or these things that are bigger, like that, divorces and all kinds of big things. So I was thinking about that, and I realized that in the process of kind of working with this situation that I find disturbing, that many Dharma tools are used. And the first one, when something big happens that I go in and out of course, I go in and out of using the Dharma tools, that's just natural, is I try to calm myself. Because I can't really use any of these tools if I'm too revved up. A lot of them don't work. I have to really get my mind as calm as possible. And when I think about the big things that have happened in my life, especially deaths, I feel like there's oftentimes this feeling of things being quite surreal. And I've wondered about that for a long time, and I actually think that's basically because we see things as permanent. And so when they aren't, our mind kind of sometimes flips into this space of it just feels very surreal for a while. This has happened most of the time when somebody really close to me has died. Of course I know they've died, but it kind of goes that way. And so using the Dharma tool for me is recognizing that this is me seeing things as permanent, and they're always changing. And going to the change in things I find very helpful, because it helps me to broaden my view and see that change is how everything goes. It's always changing. These things that are functioning in our lives and maybe not functioning so well. So that helps to broaden my perspective. For me, in particular, I usually have to try to find some way to work with anger, because I usually have some kind of anger response to many things that come up. Other people are different that way. And so I know that with anger that I'm not seeing things clearly, and I'm exaggerating the negative, and I just tell myself that, and I try to recognize it, and I try to keep myself calm, as best I can, and then I actually try to use the things that are the reverse of that. And I think what really finally takes me there is a few things. I usually start with feeling, if I'm angry, it's because something isn't happening the way I want it to be. In this particular situation, the first thing that really came up strongly that I use often is recognizing that I created this. Everything else is the conditions. My experience is something that I have created from my past actions. Everything else, the person I'm angry at, or the situation I'm angry at, or the difficulty, whatever, that's just the conditions. And when I get to that place, everything really turns in a positive way. But it's not done. And so in this situation, then we actually had a community meeting, and in the middle of that meeting, I really got quite in touch both emotionally, which was kind of uneasy, you know, kind of raw feeling and vulnerable feeling, but I don't think those are things to stay away from personally. Maybe manage, but they help me to see things, to go to these places, even though I don't do it very skillfully sometimes. That seems to be the process for me at this point in life. And what I recognized from that very clearly was this false sense of stability that I want in my life, and that I had like propped up samsara once again through the view I had about this person that I'd carried for decades. I've carried this view to help me prop up this feeling of stability in samsara. So that's another Dharma tool, is just recognizing that for what it is. And that gives me the freedom then to look at the situation with more reality, try to find the reality. And that helped me to actually have much more compassion, to see myself and the person both as suffering, and to see and to go to the place of compassion, and that always helps with anger. And just trying to put myself in the other person's shoes, and that wasn't too hard to do. Once I was kind of doing that some already, but then that really moved there, and now I can easily come back to that place. I don't have to have any anger about this at all, and that's been gone for quite a long time. It's just better for me to recognize the situation as it is. Someone wanting to be happy and not having the tools. And then there comes the part of, oh, what can I do? And this is where the Venerable has taught a few times on the Theravada approach to the four immeasurables, which are, you know, wishing everyone to have happiness in its causes, to be free of suffering in its causes, not to be separated from sorrowless bliss, and to abide in equanimity where you're free of attachment, anger, aversion, attachment, anger, and what's the word? Bias, yeah. Which is kind of like indifference also, in a way, just not caring. And so since this whole situation came up in my mind, I'm like, how can I say something very directly to this person that would be helpful? It's been my question to myself. And I have not been able to answer that. At first I was working in that mode, and it had some effect, it was okay. But the real question has always remained, how can I work with this? What can I say that would be helpful to this person? And I haven't actually answered that as the situation continues, the behaviors continue on their side. But I have recognized that the piece on equanimity is where I need to be. And the way she explained that is, our basic stance is, we want to genuinely be friendly with people. That's the loving kindness. That's where we start from. And when they're having difficulties, we want to have compassion. And when they're having successes and doing well, we want to rejoice for them, which is also something we don't always do. And then when we can't really help in a situation, we need to have a mind of equanimity in the sense of staying open to the person, so that when the time is ripe, when the skills on my side and the receptivity on the other side can match, that you have a mind that's receptive, that can actually do something helpful. And so that's kind of, like the question is how to work with these big situations. And I guess I'd have to say it does come down to refuge in the sense of, although this is new for me to think of this in this way, but it's something I've been thinking about for weeks, months actually, is about refuge and what it really is to me. And I have to say, for me, at this point in time, it's using the Dharma tools. And so trying to put my mind in line with the Dharma and seeing that as a kind of protection, in the sense of a safe way to go.